Welcome to Failed Forward, a podcast for professionals who are wondering, how the hell did I get here?
Join your host, Rachel Durkin, and me, Donna Miller, as we discuss the messy, bumpy, and often unattractive journey to success.
After all, if it isn't hard to do, is it really worth doing? Hello, and welcome to Failed Forward, a podcast for those of us wondering, how the hell did I get here? I'm Rachel Durkin. I'm with Paradigm Marketing and Design, a web marketing, branding, and sales enablement company that specializes in working with clients with a complex sale. We help our clients shorten sales cycles and increase the number of quality meetings their sales team is having. I am also joined by my lovely and talented co-host, Donna Miller. Donna, tell everybody about yourself.
Why, thank you, Rachel Durkin. I am President and Chief Visionary Officer at C3 Workplace, as well as founder of Donna Miller Business Growth Consulting, where for the last 30 years, we have been helping companies accelerate their growth by providing office space, business advisory services, and support services. The clients that are coming to us know that we build efficient, executable, connected systems that are a foundation for real growth. So, we are delighted today in this episode of Failed Forward, How the Hell Did I Get Here, to have our good friend, Jeff Weiss. So Jeff, tell us a little bit about yourself and all the fabulous things that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you both for having me on your show today. I am truly honored to be here. My background, I actually have been in sales and sales leadership positions for, I guess, 30 plus years, 40 years, or whatever it's been now. I refuse to keep count after a certain point.
Probably smart.
And I went to college specifically for that. Not really. I have degrees in music.
Music.
Well, that's kind of close. Yeah.
I think I'd love to know the percentages on who's actually doing what they went to school for. I'm going to guess it's pretty low.
I would think less than 20%, but that's anecdotal at best. Anyway, I had degrees in music, both bachelor's and master's. I ended up in sales because I had gotten married during the middle of my master's degree, and I promised the girl that took that chance on me that we'd have her back in school in the fall, and we did, but there were no teaching jobs. So I ended up getting a job in sales, and I never went back. The first year I made 50% more than I would make teaching, and it just didn't make sense. But I had a long career in 3 different industries. The longest time, 20 plus years, was in the insurance industry with a Fortune 500 insurance company. Everybody knows the name. I try to be brand agnostic to a certain degree on these shows because I got followers in all kinds of companies. But in that particular position, I was still self-employed the whole time. And I was a state manager for them in Texas, one of the state managers in Texas. So went as high as I could there. But about 10 years ago, I retired from that and I began to write, and I found, oh my goodness, am I in my happy spot? And so I write a lot of books. I've written 3 business or sales parables, won 4 awards with them so far. So they may not stink.
Yeah, they may not.
I don't think so.
They may not.
But I'm at the happiest place in my life now that I get to write so much and speak.
Was the writing in retirement planned, or was it?
It actually was. I wrote my first book actually right before I retired. It was fourth quarter of 2013 when I finished that one, and I sent it to Bob Berg, who's one of our great friends, and he gave me such encouragement and such great feedback. And then he and I had known each other. We've known each other now 20 plus years and been friends for a long time. And he even has mentored me along the way. And so when he and I got to do the new book this year, it was just such a joy for me. It was one of those friend and career moments.
I have to imagine it's a fun project all around. So we love that you've had all this success, and we've loved following you and Bob on your successful journeys. But we are here to talk about failing forward. So talk to us a little bit about maybe what 1 or 2 of your biggest professional obstacles were and how you overcame them. I mean, the entire go-giver way of life, which those of us who know us probably know what that means, is counterintuitive and, kind of we use it in the face of challenges. It feels like it's the opposite of what we should be doing. But talk to us about what your professional obstacles were.
Sure. Probably the biggest professional obstacle that I ever had is that gray matter that's between my two ears. It wasn't always cooperative, and that's the best way to describe it. But when I first came to Texas back in 1989, it was on a job transfer in the industrial uniform industry. I had been one of the top salesmen in the nation with that company in Georgia. They moved me to Texas to start a new branch. And that about 2 years later, that company got bought out. And the company that bought us out, it didn't work out really well for me. I did stay with them for 18 months, but in my thought process, there were a lot of things that weren't exactly right. And instead of taking responsibility and putting my big boy clothes on and saying, my success or failure is always my success or failure,
Mhm.
not theirs, I tended to have a little bit of a pity party and blame the new company until the point that I was just literally going under financially. I went from making about 60 grand a year to making about 20 over the course of 18 months. And it was not pretty. It was tough.
Wow.
And
And
then go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how did you handle that?
Poorly.
Okay.
I can remember I actually quit, and I won't say what I said on the day that I quit because that would be offensive to most people who heard
So a
it.
dream to half the population. Okay.
Yes, it's like I could hear that old Johnny Paycheck song in the
Mhm.
background, take this job, and well, that's what I basically told them. But I didn't have another job lined up. I was going under
Wow.
financially. I even got advised to go bankrupt, and I told the attorney, not going to do that. And
Wow.
I did it for two reasons. Not that people have struggles, and if they've done that, I'm not being judgmental about that. But I said, I'm not going to do that for two reasons. Reason one, I owe the debts. I
Yeah.
signed my name, I owe the debts. Reason two, you want $1,200 and I'm too broke to pay you. I was too broke to go bankrupt.
Yeah, that's
But
funny.
how I started with the insurance industry after that, and it was still 100% commission. It took me a while to get going, but the day that made the difference for me, I had we had moved out of this nice middle class neighborhood. Kids, it was idyllic for my children. They were 9 and 5 at the
Mhm.
time. Had to move them into this area that was terrible in a mobile home. That I'm almost exaggerating it when I call it a mobile home. I mean, it was
Wow.
terrible. And we had left some things in the garage at the other house that they said we could for storage. But when the realtor sold the house, they weren't able to get in touch with us. So the day that I had to tell my two daughters that their bicycles had been given away to
Oh,
Goodwill,
yeah.
that changed their daddy. I'm just going to tell you, it was uh, gut wrenching for me to have to tell them I couldn't go get another one yet.
Yeah.
And that day, standing out on the front porch of that mobile home is when I changed. And I said, no more.
Wow.
I can't let my family down. This has to be the difference for me. And so from that point forward, what I did is this is telling my age, ladies, but
Mhm.
I carried their pictures around in my daytimer. And every time I'd start to go in and make a sales call, it didn't matter if the person was happy with me or didn't want a sales call, whatever. I would look at those girls and remember I wasn't making a call for money. I wasn't making a call for an insurance company. I was making a call for the two most precious people I knew. And it was huge to me. That's when I made my change.
Oh my God, that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. So, but I mean, let me take a step back for a second. You said the word accountability, and then you told this amazing story about accountability. But what do you was it when you say everything changed? Was it you took your own accountability? Like, what was it when you say you changed?
It was, I drew a line in the sand and said, I'm not putting up with this stuff out of me anymore. And
Mm,
because again, I was in a very dark place at that time, and I
mhm,
blamed everybody except the man I shave. And quite
mhm,
frankly, there's a reason I've worked for myself for almost now 35 years. It's because
mhm.
I'd much rather shave the boss's face than kiss the boss's foot. But at that
Yeah.
point, I wasn't giving the responsibility where it belonged, and it was just I'd had enough. Things
Wow.
changed.
That's a really great lesson for anybody out there who's struggling. Is I always tell my team we have this debrief after every time something goes wrong. And because things go wrong, that's just what happens.
Sure.
And I always say, like, it's not about blame, it's about we work in a service industry and with customers. So I are we always 100% wrong? No, but I can only control 100% of what I can control, right? I can't control
Right.
anybody else. I can maybe influence people or change minds, but I can only control me. So I say, Doesn't matter if the client was challenging. It doesn't matter if the situation came up. What could we have done differently in this situation, if anything? And let's talk about it. And I think that's so important to focus on because, it's really easy to say, oh, well, that just didn't work. And I think when we're really down, and I've done it too, that's what it becomes easy to point fingers. It's almost like a defense mechanism.
Right. Absolutely agree with you.
It is. It's a bit of a cycle. When you have a bit of a failure, it's usually because you're in a negative place. And like you said, Bob, until you find that place within you where you realize, and I when Rachel and I were first talking about this show, and she said, "Well, what was your biggest obstacle?" I said, "Me."
Yeah.
The only ceiling that was ever above my head was the one that I put there, whether it was because I didn't take responsibility, whether it was because I had self-limiting beliefs. And, we talk a lot when we talk about failure, we talk about imposter syndrome. At any point in my life, I've had some variation of that. So I love the idea of, realizing that we can be in pity parties, and sometimes that's the thing that has to change.
I call it radical
Absolutely.
accountability.
Radical accountability.
Yeah.
I love that term.
Love that. So, Jeff, as you kind of look back, and you and I have a couple of decades behind us, and this can be a hard question because we could answer it so many different ways, but what are the one or two really important lessons that you have learned?
The first one I'm going to tell you on that, it's going to sound more like a personal context, but it's also a business context. And it was a lesson I learned from my very first sales manager. I was finishing up my master's degree in Texas. The guy who ran the musical instrument company that I ended up going to work for had called me. He said, "I'd like for you to consider coming to work for us." And he said, "Why don't you come out here during spring break, spend a week, stay at my house, ride with me and do the job. And you'll know if you like it." And ladies, every morning, here's what he did. We would get up at like 6 a.m. We'd be drinking coffee around the table. His two children at that time, Becky and Ted. Ted was, I think, in the first grade, and Becky was younger. They would run in there. They would jump up in his lap, and he would give them both a big hug and a big kiss. And he said two things I had never heard in this context. He said, "I love you both so much. I am just so glad God picked me to be your daddy." Now, I know my parents loved me. They worked, they put food on the table, they kept a roof over my head, but they were not demonstrative of that. It was not that way at all. And so when I saw this, it was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a man do that before. Never seen anybody do that. And so what I did later when I had my two daughters, they were 9 and 5 back when I started in insurance. They're older than that now. But I tell everybody, I do believe in love at first sight because I fell in love with both of them on the first day I ever saw them. And it's lasted forever and always will. So that is the lesson that I learned, that it didn't just change my world when Jack did that around his table and I had no children. It changed the world for my children. It even changed the world for my grandchildren.
Wow.
I've watched the same process. And in a business context, it's the same idea. You let your clients know how much you appreciate them, not just assume that they know it, not just, oh, casually, I am really appreciative of you. And if you approach everything that way, it works so well. And the second lesson probably piggybacks on that, really, and it's something I learned from our friend Bob Berg. The first book I ever read of Bob's was Endless Referrals, and someone gave it to me in January of 2000. And what I learned in that book was really how acting out that exact same lesson. It was how to have my focus on how the other person benefits if they're working with me. It's not about what my company does and how great we are. It's not about how great of a salesperson I am. It's about how does their world get better, either professionally or personally, if we're working together. And once that light bulb went off in my head, my career took a fast jump. I had been like an average district sales manager to that point in the insurance company. I'd make my quota one year, miss it the next.
Yeah.
But that year, things changed. And 2 years later, I was a regional manager. And 2 years after that, I was a state manager. And I stayed a state manager until I retired.
And you got
And
your
so,
bites?
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, most fun day ever for me in my life practically was when came home one day. The girls had come home from school. I said, get in the car. We're going to Walmart. And
Oh.
they said, Dad, my oldest said, Dad, I got homework. I can't do that. I said, I don't care what you got. We're going to Walmart. And I took them through Walmart. And I'm walking them up and down those aisles. And I get back there where the bikes are. And I said, whoa, look at those bicycles. Aren't they great? And they said, yeah, Dad, they're great. And I got down in the middle of Walmart and I pulled both of my girls in close and I said, I love you so much. And you can have anything in this dadgum store you want today.
Oh. Did they choose
Best day
bikes or
ever.
did they choose that they throw you through a loop and get something else?
Say it again. I'm sorry. I
Did they
missed the
choose the
connection.
bikes or did they throw you for a loop and get something else?
No, they went bicycles.
Okay, my kids always
Bicycles,
like, I think we're
helmets.
getting bikes. And then they're like, you know what? I really want this coloring book. And I'm like, well, that's great.
It would have saved me about $500
That's probably
probably.
true. Yeah.
Oh, but what a great
That's
moment.
amazing. That's amazing. So, okay, so Bob, I mean, oh my God, I'm Bob, Jeff. Every
That's a
story I'm hearing
compliment, though.
from
If you
you,
call me
Yes,
Bob's
that
name,
is
it
that's
is a
fine,
Bob.
Bob.
compliment.
I
Bob's
take
my,
that as a
Bob's
compliment.
friend Jeff. I'm sorry, we were just talking about Bob Burke. Jeff, first of all, I love having you on. Every story you're telling me is just giving me goosebumps. But one last question. If you could go back and do anything differently,
Mhm.
because even like that horrible moment you had, that changed your life, right?
Right.
But what would you change?
My answer might be strange, and I don't know how many different answers you ladies will get on this show. I'm actually writing a novel right now, my first full novel. Everything I've written up to this point is business related, but my
Sure.
writing coach is John David Mann, and he's been doing novels since I'm working on a novel. It's a time travel novel. And the
Ooh,
one thing I can tell you without question, I wouldn't change a thing. I
awesome.
literally, every bad thing that happened, every thing that didn't work right still led me to the success I had. And I wouldn't go back and change it in time because I would fear that I'm not smart enough to make it work out correctly and I could mess something else
Yeah,
up.
it's like the butterfly effect, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would just, if I could do anything, if I could go back in time and do anything, I would just tell myself, don't worry, you'll get through this. It's going to work out just
Mhm.
fine.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that is the best answer. And I completely agree with that. And I think there is this arc and you get a little bit
Mhm.
older and you go over that arc and you realize that and I knew this years ago, not professionally, personally, and it was in the middle of challenges. I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be, even in the most difficult of moments, because I firmly believe that everything is for a reason. I joke, we talked about our teams. I joke, I literally was the world's most accomplished micromanager. There was no situation I couldn't make worse, and I evolved. But those people still talk to me. I mean, so so I completely agree with you. As much as I think about what would I want to change, the truth is I don't think I'd change a thing. Well, I know
Yeah,
one
there's
thing
a
to change, but
One of my favorite quotes is by Kierkegaard, and it's basically, I'm paraphrasing, but life is lived forward, but only understood backwards. And
It's
so
true.
the perspective I have at this point in my life is way different than when I was in my
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah. Amazing.
Jeff,
So
as always, we love having you.
we do. So
Oh,
Jeff, tell our audience how they can find you
best way to
and
find
learn about
me.
all your new good books.
Okay, cool. Thank you. The new book is called Streetwise to Saleswise, Become Objection Proof and Beat the Sales Blues. And so if someone's interested in that, just go to streetwise to saleswise.com. They can download the first two chapters to make sure it's something they'd like to have. Just to find out anything about any of the books that I've done or about me, you can go to jeffcwest.com. And if someone's interested in having me work with their sales team, because I still do that, and Bob and I and a lady named Kim Anjali have a huge event going on in West Palm in June. So
Oh,
yeah, I'll make sure you guys get information. It's going to be
Yeah.
SalesWise Live
Sounds
2024, and then we're
great.
doing a 2-day intensive event. I'll get your addresses and make sure you know about it. But the fusionpoints.com, my branding when I'm teaching sales related issues is Fusion Points. So fusionpoints.com or just jeffcwest.com. Heck, it's all there. So
right. And of course, all of that will be in the show notes. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, we hope that when you fail forward, you learn your lesson from it. Thanks so much, everyone.